Welcome to your weekly Seize the Day cruise show powered by Travel with Brigitte. Now let's turn it over to our hosts, Carla Mesa and Julie Williams. Julie, what's the topic today?
And I'm Julie Williams, along with Travel with Brigitte cruise expert Carla Mesa on the Seize the Day cruise show. Today, we are going to revisit a topic that's not new, but is trending right now. So we'll talk about what it is, what the trend means, and what we might see in the near future because of it. Carla, let's start with dispelling an assumption about adults-only cruising.
So adults-only cruising, obviously means no children aboard. It's usually 18 and over. Sometimes the cruise lines do decide to have a 21 and over rule, usually depending on what kind of client they're used to getting, right? So it doesn't automatically mean that it's just this wild party cruise. If anything, what it really is, it's usually a lot more peaceful. It's a lot more elevated. It's a lot more romantic. You see a lot of couples. You see a lot of older groups of friends. You see retirees as well. So again, it doesn't mean that you're just going on this wild, all-out party cruise.
And that's what I think when I think of adults-only cruising. And it's sad because that's not what I'm looking for. I am looking for the relaxation, like what you were talking about.
Yeah, I would say even comparing it to like an adults-only resort, where the focus is the restaurants and the spa and the adults-only pools. And so it's really focused on just what's important to their main client, which a lot of these cruise lines, they're noticing that they don't get a lot of families as it is. They don't really have to cater to a younger audience. So instead, they'd rather, put their extra effort and funding into the actual client that does come and what they want. And the reason it's trending right now is because a pretty popular cruise line, a smaller cruise line for sure, Oceania, they have announced that moving forward as of January 7th, all of their sailings and all of their bookings will be adults only, 18 and over. So Oceania is already a cruise line that considers themselves a foodie cruise line. That is their main focus. That is what they put their extra effort and extra funding into to make sure that they have the best of the best when it comes to cuisine. That's what a lot of their itineraries are based on. So that was, it wasn't actually a big surprise for some people. If anything, a lot of people thought they already were an adults-only cruise line because that's all they really get. It's not really a big change for them.
Okay. All right. So that actually sounds quite appealing to me. But I mean, I know there's everybody has their own thing. So we're talking about a totally different vibe from say from a Virgin to a Disney to an Oceania.
Yes, exactly. Their focus is on quiet zones and, fewer lines and more of an elevated energy, more of an adult grown up energy throughout the ship. You have your cruise lines that are dedicated to families and dedicated to the fun, vibrant, excursion focused, fun activity focused cruise lines. And which is great. And they have their specific clients that they appeal to. But Oceania is recognizing that there is this whole other side. There is this other client that wants something a little different. They want something a little more sophisticated. They want to feel like they're at a resort on sea.
I would think even for parents, they're not having to keep the watch and think, okay, I have to be back at the child care or the child, activity center by such and such a time to pick him up. And then so I've got only an hour and a half here. It sounds like it's a lot more relaxed. I'll just sort of wander where I want, when I want.
Yeah, that's a great point. We just saw a news story over the holidays about a family on Carnival Cruise Lines. They've kind of tightened up their rules as well. And they received a letter about their child that was, I believe, either under 18 or under 16 that broke curfew. And, it was kind of a one-off warning, but in that letter, it let them know if there was a second time, they will be fined $500. And if there was a third time, their entire party on whatever day or port that they were at was going to be escorted off the boat, and they would be on the no sailings list.
Wow.
So
that's serious.
It is serious. It is. And you know what? I applaud Carnival for making their rules and, actually imposing them, because that can affect other, cruisers' experience for sure. And even that family alone, it's maybe they didn't know that they had an option to do an adults only cruise, or maybe moving forward, they'll recognize that, okay, you know what? Maybe our kids weren't ready for this. Maybe we need to, do something a little different. Yeah,
or maybe they're not mature enough to not keep tabs on them as much.
Exactly.
Because sometimes I know that they'll have adjacent cabins that might not be connecting, and they might not know if their kid goes out at midnight.
Yes.
Yes. I mean,
especially old teenagers, they're in their rebellious phase. Just because you said no and you think they're, perfectly safe in the room next door, they might have said, "Oh, I can just go get some pizza. No one's going to notice." Mm-hmm. But someone will.
I took my son on his first cruise when he was 11. So he was actually, and he's always been mature for his age. Everything in the world was safer back then. Okay, so it was pretty much like, as long as you don't get off the ship, we'll touch base. We'll meet at lunch. You just go wherever you want to. And I knew I could find him in the arcade, or that he was going to maybe go do the scavenger hunt or something like that. But, I didn't watch him every second. In fact, we went to a port that was not supposed to be the safest. And so another single mom and I left our kids on board. But they were both about 11, 12. And we went out for about an hour without them because we wanted to make sure they stayed safe, right? Mm-hmm. But with some kids, you really can't do that. And, they were pretty well behaved, but it could have turned bad for me. I mean, it might not have been a real wise idea. Not just for my son, but this kid he was with. He could have gotten in trouble. We could have both been banned for life. Because the person he's with, was, I don't know, vandalizing or whatever, horseplay.
Yeah, you never know. So again, it's not to say that you shouldn't take your children on cruising. There's definitely cruise lines for that. There are big times for that. But again, we're trying to focus on those that they want to get away from that. Maybe you're celebrating an anniversary, or honeymoons, empty nesters, or just even, sometimes parents need to get away. Mm-hmm. It's really nice to have that as an option. I know for myself, I've done adult only trips where, within our friend group, it's adults only. But then I get on the ship and I see all these other children run around, or I see the itinerary for the day, and I'm like, your son could have been here. What? If I'm surrounded by all these other children, why don't I have my own? If I'm gonna take an adults only vacation, then I want it to be adults only.
Yeah, exactly. You need a respite from parenting sometimes. And I was a single mom, so I definitely needed a respite. But it was like a respite because we got to spend time together right before he went for the summer to stay with his dad. So we had a week together on a cruise. But it was a respite for me. I wasn't having to babysit or watch where he is every minute because he was old enough, So these changes, probably not changes. There's going to be as many options for kids continuing, but there will probably be more options for adults only. Do you anticipate it to be more pricey?
It could be, yes. I don't think Oceania has a lot of reason to raise their prices unless they're adding additional amenities, mainly because they're already a cruise line that hardly services children. They don't have, extended activities for them. There's a quote even from the CEO in the statement saying that their entire children's activity club is a ping pong table on the deck. So their typical, cruiser is already in their mid 60s, is already an established, adult later in life. So I don't see necessarily why they would raise their prices, but I will say that with this becoming a trend, with there being a lot of, this generational shift of people, waiting to have children later in life or not having them, you have a lot more couples and families that don't consist of children or don't consist of people under 18. So I do think it's going to encourage other cruise lines either to start itineraries that are adults only, or if they notice their numbers are very similar, they might make that shift also into adults only. So you might see some increase because of competition. That could happen in the coming time.
Right. Hey, before I forget, we put a link to a free one-page resource on adult cruising in the show notes. And in just a second, Carla's going to close by telling us how we can experience a bit of the adults-only vibe, even if it's not an adults-only cruise. Maybe even if we bring the kids.
You're listening to the Seize the Day Cruise Show, powered by Travel with Brigitte. We'd love to hear what you have to say about this topic, so be sure to leave a comment below.
Yes, definitely. Again, it's going to be two things. One, the cruise line. So if you go with the cruise line that isn't necessarily dedicated to families, but they're not an adults only, you'll already kind of get that vibe. One that I can think of immediately off the top of my head is Celebrity. Celebrity Cruise Line is the sister cruise line to Royal Caribbean. Well, we all know Royal Caribbean for being like pretty much the amusement park at sea, right? So Celebrity is their sister brand that is adult focused. It has a much more mature look to the ships and to even the itineraries, but they don't prohibit children from coming on board. You definitely can book that as a family vacation, but you're going to have a much more adult vibe than you would on a Royal Caribbean cruise. So that's going to be my first word of advice, is just really paying attention to the cruise line and what they have to offer. The second piece of advice I would say is a longer cruise. So anything, I would say past the 7-day mark. Sometimes families, they can't justify that amount of time. Either kids are in school, or if they have multiple, that can start to get expensive. So I would say not just 7+ day cruises, but also cruises that are completely outside of your typical vacation timestamps. So spring break is not going to be a good idea. The middle, June, July, that's going to be summer vacation, lots of children. Christmas and New Year's, so all those times where they do get a break from school, that might not be the best time for you to go if you want the adult only vibe.
Awesome. Great advice. Okay, so tell us what you think in the comments section below. If you could choose only one vibe, peaceful luxury, party cruise, family fun, which would you choose? And to book a cruise that'll get you that vibe, whatever one it is, be sure to check with the cruise expert at bookings@travelwithbrigitte.com. We're Carla and Julie on the Seize the Day Cruise Show, powered by Travel with Brigitte, and we'll be back next week. Till then, be sure to seize the day.
Thank you for joining us today on the Seize the Day Cruise Show, powered by Travel with Brigitte. If you enjoyed today's episode, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to add your own 2 cents below. By the way, you can book a cruise 24/7 at bookings@travelwithbrigitte.com. Let us show you how we can get you a better value than you'd get on your own. And join us again next week on the Seize the Day Cruise Show.